one more power panel before we break out. So I would like to invite the next panelist to come up to the stage to talk about holistic marketing. And whilst the panelists prepare themselves, I, as an ex-hotel marketer, am very excited for this session. So with a raise of hands in the audience, I just wanted to ask, who in the last 2 months has used ChatGPT for search, for travel search? Okay, interesting. So I was recently at a Booking.com conference, their Click conference in March, and actually 68% of all Gen Z are using ChatGPT for the search. So when we traditionally look at the inspiration, the search, and the booking, it's fascinating to see as hotel marketers how that landscape is completely transforming. So that's why I think we're all really excited for the next panel. So come on up, guys, and I'm going to hand you over to Emily, who's going to kick things off.
Hi everyone. I'm very conscious we have got probably the worst slot just before lunch. I was mentioning it to, I think it was James at Stripe earlier, and he advised me to be funny, which is not my skill set. Luckily, my skill set is marketing, alongside everybody else here on the panel. So what we're going to talk about today is around guest experience and how we can enhance that through targeted marketing efforts. So we'll be looking at the digital landscape and how that's influenced our relationships with those guests, but also around brand identity. So I'll quickly we'll do our introductions. So firstly, my name is Emily. I am a marketing and brand consultant for hotels and spa brands, including Champneys Health Spas, where I was formerly marketing director. I'll hand over.
Thank you. I'm Sarah. I'm head of marketing at CAIRN Hotel Group. I've spent 15 years working with some of the world's biggest brands, so anything from Barbie to TV and film to WWF, not the wrestling, and now in hospitality for the past 3 years.
Hello, I'm Jessica. I'm from the Grand in York, which is part of Splendid Hospitality Group. The Grand in York is an independent hotel, so I can give you that angle, but Splendid Hospitality Group also work with lots of brands that have been mentioned today, Hilton, IHG, Indigo's, bits and pieces like that.
Hi, my name is Himanil Bose, and I head marketing for AG Hotels. Have been in the marketing field for over 15 years now in different kind of atmospheres, including startups and technology and now hospitality. So yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Holly. I'm Group Marketing Director at Apex Hotels, which is a group of 10 hotels, 8 city Apex hotels and 2 rural hotels.
Lovely, thank you guys. Okay, so what we'll kick off today is talking around guest data and how we can utilize that to really enhance the personalization with our communications, but also with the services we offer, and what challenges we have around that with privacy regulations, including GDPR. Himanil, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's one of the most important questions as to, from a hospitality point of view, and overall, I think from a marketing point of view, is data. And how are we using that particular data in actually communicating and engaging with our guests across? In AG Hotels, what we are more or less, we started off in 2018. So in a sense, we have been a pandemic child of sorts. So digital was obviously a lot of things that we had to immediately get in terms of guest engagement. And understanding data was very, very important for us. So we kind of divided into 3 different pillars. One in terms of the acquisition of the data, how are we acquiring it and what kind of levels we can get in. the next part, obviously, is the analysis of that data. And we very quickly understood that, our primary audience were more corporate, and so almost 60 to 70% of our audience was more corporate. So we had to kind of engage that and to their expectations. And various elements were then put in place. But one of the things that we started doing is asking our own audiences or our guests for suggestions as what they would like. So we cohorted into 14 different audience parameters, and then basically looked at what are their expectations, and then actually started asking them questions as well as to what is it that you would expect more from our side. And that also helped us engage the audience in a sense which was very, very good for us. And they started actually looking at us as more partners of Sense rather than just somewhere that they would come and stay. So yeah, that was a good starting point, but of course we're fairly new and we're working towards constantly evolving our processes and systems. Yeah.
So I'll talk from a challenges perspective. Okay. So we are a 60-year-old company. We have 40 to 50 venues, depending on which way you skin it. So we've got spas, bars, hotels, restaurants. We have over 40 integrations that we're looking at. So from across the group, whether they're branded, non-branded, we're building a custom platform to bring all of that in, because as much as it's great to have data, if it's everywhere, we need to bring it in and make sense of it and understand who's in there. And I think there's a lot of people in the room that will be in this situation. We talk a lot about how great data is and the potential for guest experience from it, but we had to start from the very, very beginning. So we're making this custom integration piece, but what we found was, even from the very beginning level of opt-ins, looking at language, looking at GDPR, looking at CCPA, there's different regulations from Australia, India, wherever your platforms are based and where you're processing your data. So in terms of the challenges that come with that and the testing that comes with that, it was working with our lawyers and with every single one of the integrations, as well as our agencies, to understand what the opt-in language was. Was it explicit? Was it clear that they were opting into the restaurant only, the hotel, CAIRN Hotel Group as a whole? And so we are about a year and a half into this, because it is a massive, massive exercise. And I don't want us to go out until we're ready for it. But in the next month, our automation should be running. We're in the final stages of it. But it's all to say, the work that goes on in the background, and as much as everybody wants everything live immediately, it's been such a great experience to get in at the very start of it and build it up and make sure that it's robust enough to make sure that we're not going to run into these legal problems, touch wood, as we go down the line. And then we can begin to personalize and really understand our guests.
Thank you. And Jessica, so in terms of the email marketing, but also SEO, SEM, how are you using these channels to acquire new customers and also retain those existing customers? And how are you measuring that impact, particularly considering the challenges around direct bookings?
A lot is what we do. I think one of the most important things to highlight, especially when it comes to direct bookings and your online presence, for us, we measure all the time. It's very constant, very consistent. It's a daily, weekly, monthly measurement of your online presence, how much traffic you're commanding through your website, but also the authority that your website holds. So for us, we have some really strict targets in place. Those targets are about where we sit on your first page search, what our metrics are on that first page, and we make sure that we're abiding by those all the time. If we start dropping in those rankings, why do we think that is? What do we need to do to change it? One of the biggest things that we had to do this year was change our website. We were able to command the good SEO rankings. We were able to keep up with the traffic, but we weren't converting when we got to the website. Therefore, we were losing those customers at that acquisition stage because the website just didn't work well enough. The user experience was absolutely terrible. We've changed that. We've now seen 151% uptake from August last year versus August this year on our website in direct bookings. So the proof is in the pudding. We're getting there, but you do have to stay on top of it. As was mentioned earlier, technology is changing drastically and very, very quickly. Those algorithms update yearly, 6 monthly. You need to make sure that we've got people that are in the business. We're very lucky that I have a digital marketing person in my business, but we also have an agency that you can educate yourself enough that you're staying on top of what is expected by Google, what is expected by those different search engines, to make sure that your search and your SEO strategy is still relevant to the current algorithm and bits and pieces like that. It's a lot to keep up with, so there's a sense of having to re-educate yourself all the time. But also I'd like to mention that what our strategy is in terms of SEO has to then be bolstered by our revenue department as well. We took some drastic measures this year by removing most of our offers from booking.com. Sorry if you're in the room. To make sure that we want to command as much direct business as we can through our website, and we're performing really well digitally, and we're doing all the things in the marketing department. But if the revenue department is still chucking up infinite offers on booking.com, then you're still not going to make the revenue. So we work very closely as a sales, marketing and revenue team to make sure we come together and that those strategies all feed into each other, so that your strategy on your SEO actually feeds into what the final results are.
And Himanil, from your point of view, what steps have you taken from an SEO point side of things?
Yeah, I mean, very interesting was the SEO part of it, because obviously, you know, we so we own around 14 hotels across the UK, and the bracket that we sit in is a very, very highly crowded market where we have your Premier Inns and your travel lodges and so on and so forth, and multiple other brands, including some of the brands out here. And we had to obviously look at a place. So in our logo itself, we've put in something we call as creating happy and thriving places. Now, one of the key core areas of that was community. And what we also realized is, while we were speaking to our customers, a lot of it, you know, they did have a community sense. They wanted to, whoever, even if it was a corporate traveler, they would want to go around the local pubs and have a nice drink around and so on. And I think that is what we started doing from an SEO point of view. Started looking at not just our brand, but also local communities and how we can piggyback on that, on their aspects as well, and try and have a content which is more community-based, which also obviously integrates our brand within there, and then create that kind of content, put it on our website, and that is what we started then seeing our searches increase. We haven't really spent any money on Google as well. So we started seeing a lot of people coming on our website. It still did not really encourage that much in terms of our conversions, but it definitely we started seeing a huge surge in our website traffic, and that eventually obviously started helping us in our direct bookings and so on. So that was one of the things that we started doing to try and surpass the heavy bidding that otherwise we would have to do if it was only location specific and so on. So we started looking at these places where, you know, local communities, helping them out, as well as also, you know, doing our own brand, a little bit of own awareness, yeah.
And Sarah, from what kind of digital strategies have you utilised, including kind of across potentially social media platforms, to improve that user journey, boost direct bookings, and effectively engage with those different audience segments?
So it's another one where we kind of started from the beginning. When I came into the business, across all of our book direct sites, so for our unbranded hotels, there was just a base offer of kind of 10% off, 15% off, and it was intended to compete with the booking.coms and just steer people away. That's not enough. You can't just compete on price and you will just lower yourself, and it's the race to the bottom. So we launched a book direct campaign last year in August, and it only took 2 weeks to put together, but it was all the commercial leads around the hotels and the group coming together with the ideas of what's the best value for us, what's the best value for the customers, What do they want to do versus what do we want them to do? Because we'd have people come into the spa, but they'd never step foot in the restaurant. They'd stay for an overnight, but they wouldn't even know that we've got conference and events facilities that they could have their next celebration at. So we put together a full strategy around it, every single channel, every single part of the booking journey, and put together base creative. So we're refreshing it at the minute, but just placing that communication and making sure that it's compelling for people and making sure that it's highlighted across social media. There's new content coming through now where it's going to be more moving imagery. There's lots of influencer visitors that are part of it that highlight the newer aspects and the more compelling aspects of it. But essentially, it's just placing the right communications in the right place at the right time. And we've seen 1.5 mil from that campaign. That's a 500 grand uplift on just the 10% and 15% off offers. Our traffic has gone up about 40% year on year. It's 26% year on year growth. So even at the basic levels of campaign, we would all love more resource, more budget, but if you all get together and everybody's doing one thing really, really well, you get the benefit and the results out of it.
And Jessica, adding on to that, particularly around social media, how have you been utilising the video content across Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say, agree with you even more and extend that point as well, that knowing your platform and knowing the demographic per platform is definitely something that you really need to pay attention to. For us specifically, we know that Instagram is one of our biggest players. We do a lot of work through Facebook as well. Our paid activity performs really well on Facebook. However, our organic activity on Instagram is coming up infinitely. The stats are climbing. The more video that we do, the better it is. We did a little bit of a test on that earlier on this year and used our cookery school as the guinea pig, and actually found that basically any static post that we did on Instagram got about 5%. It was rubbish engagement, next to no likes and follows and no shares. If we post a reel on Instagram that is UCG content, is people focused and experience focused, the engagement rate on that it climbed exponentially. So we've been quite harsh with ourselves. We've removed a lot of the static content that we then post for the cookery school, and we do all moving image. I have the benefit of having some very young, talented people within the team that we can create the content. However, there are some quick wins that maybe you can do in the local area as well. A different example, our afternoon tea was struggling at the beginning of this year. We couldn't work out why. We have a great offering, but the word wasn't getting out there. We did 3 very simple paid opportunities in the local area. One was someone who runs a blog called Mumbler for a mums group. We asked her to come in with her 2 daughters. She posted some content on our behalf. We did 1 paid opportunity and 1 other guest from the local area. Now, these are people that we deem influential people in the area. They wouldn't be deemed influencers as such by normal Instagram standards, but in the area that is relevant to us for F&B, for example, they were extremely influential. We saw an instant uptick, and our afternoon tea performed, I think we did plus 800 covers in Q1. So it's knowing what works in terms of what you can have as quick wins that maybe don't cost an awful lot of money, and then in other areas where you need to really push the content and what sort of content. So we're really leaning towards that UCG content at the moment. The video is working extremely well, but it's how you center that. Like you said, there's the message that we want to get across. It's what we want our guests to do when they come to the hotel. But placing it and creating that content from their point of view and talking and showing them video content about what their experience is going to be like when they come to the hotel, that translates much better. You have to find the balance between the message you want to send people, but the message that they want to receive. And the experiential pieces for us are infinitely more valuable than when we're trying to force offers or new dishes, or there's a new offering in the cookery school. That never works quite so well. It's always about what a lovely time you can come and have and how that experience looks to the guest. So
great. And I think that's what's so important in our roles, is around understanding keeping on top of all those trends and where we're moving to. Holly, just to kind of bring you in on that, in terms of how have you helped to build that hotel relationship with that in mind, in terms of how our guests' expectations around customer experience have changed dramatically, really, in the last 10 years?
Sure. Well, I think for me, in terms of hotels, hotels is relatively new for me. So I've been with Apex just coming up to a year now. So previous to that, they're very much focused on food and beverage and retail. So it's been really interesting to get under the skin of the mindset, I would say, of our corporate guests, but also our leisure guests. And, you know, we have really strong GRI scores, which is fantastic, 90% currently. So we've really looked at, from a strategic perspective, of getting into the skin of, okay, so what is it? Because we know in our market, especially in city centres with 4-star hotels, we've got some really great competition. So in terms of what are those defining features that guests are really looking for through their experience, it really, for me, comes down to that authenticity of the team and how we can add value, not necessarily just through promotions or driving footfall or discounts, etc. It is really understanding what makes our team and how can we support our team as best as possible so that they can show up and be authentic and deliver those great experiences. And that goes across rooms, spa, F&B, all elements. As a business, we've just recently acquired 2 new rural properties, which is really exciting. And that's part of our strategy in terms of diversifying. So we have pine trees up in Pitlochry, and we've just recently acquired Meldrum House, which is a beautiful 13th century country house and golf course up in Aberdeenshire. So I think in terms of what guests want as well from city versus rural escapes, it has been looking at how do we show up and just make sure that those trends are showing up. So if you are, up in the Highlands, you still can have, your oat milk, or you can still have a menu which satisfies your dietary requirements or keeps you on track in terms of, your need states if you're on a specific diet, or say if you are traveling with corporate, if you're traveling with business, people do want to continue staying on track. So again, looking at those trends, looking at how we utilize in-house gyms, all of those touch points. So similar to what Sarah was saying in terms of starting from the bottom and kind of not taking anything for granted and thinking that we kind of know best. It has been a great exercise. And one of the biggest things I would say is what really shocked me was looking at some of the trend reports, TripAdvisor one from last year, saying that, saying that 83% of guests will look at on-site dining, what that on-site dining offer looks like to select which hotel they're going to stay at. So when we are in a really highly competitive market, such as London and Edinburgh, that we know there's so much investment there. It's all those key things, making sure we're considering those.
Right. You got anything to add to that, Sarah? No? Okay. Okay, great. So in terms of an area we know is vitally important is around that brand storytelling, understanding what the brand identity is. How do you balance that? And we've touched on this slightly beforehand in terms of those commercial pressures that are coming potentially from other areas of the business to ensure that we're still returning and getting that kind of, that daily revenue coming in, but also making sure that you are telling that story and you're keeping that real kind of core brand identity.
So I love brands, I love branding, I love the storytelling behind it. And we had, when I first started in the role, Elm Bank had gone through a refurbishment. It's in York, it's gorgeous. It's one of the finest examples of Art Nouveau in the UK. Look it up. It's just turned into a Tapestry by Hilton. So we went through a full rebrand exercise to then brand it with a Hilton as a soft brand. So we got the distribution. And if you looked at Elmbank before, and I'm sure you'll be able to find some pictures on Google, it looked like a funeral home. It was not gorgeous. It was very old. There's historic properties all over the UK, and people come to expect it. We're very lucky that there's historic properties all over the UK. They've each got their story, and it's about telling something that's compelling. So yes, it's great that we've got this fine collection of Art Nouveau, but how is that presented to the guest? And if they don't care about Art Nouveau, how are they experiencing the site? And you don't want them to come into somewhere that looks like a relic of the past. So we look deep into the history of Elmbank, who had lived there before. It used to be a mansion house for mayors of the city. It held a lot of the grand parties. The architecture was put together by some of the guys that helped to build York as you see it today. George Walton is the redesigner, a Macintosh contemporary. So it was taking all of those elements, all of those stories, and the truth that it has within York, and building out an authentic story that is compelling to guests. So a lot of that is community focused. So making sure that we have partnerships with local Yorkshire companies. So whether that be the butchers down the road for the meats that we use, to the York Gin afternoon tea, which is an exclusive. It's one of the best afternoon teas, maybe better than yours, in York. And it can be enjoyed in Leatham's Brasserie, which is named after one of the owners, or the Peacock Bar, which actually has jewels encrusted in the walls. And so it's inviting people on these like unique experiences, and then as they walk through, they can see the Art Nouveau, but it's been uplifted with that refurbishment, and you can see the stained glass as you walk around, but there's also art postcards that you can see around that tell you about the history in snapshots. There's little private nooks and books, so discovery libraries we call them, dotted around each of the buildings for the hotel, because it's often 3 different pieces. It's looking at how we give back, so part of our sustainability piece is getting wildflowers back into central Yorkshire. So the Dales is well known for it, but people are invited to take seed luggage tags with them on their adventures, so they can take a piece of Elmbank back with them, or they can plant in venue as well. So it's just giving little touches and little details across the journey. So yes, we can put it on a website and we can do some nice social reels and get people engaged, but when it comes to on-site, it needs to be that experience and the service that really speak to the overall brand story, and that's really where it can fall apart. So we make sure that there's lots of training, there's lots of tools that we use in the background for project management and brand management, so that the story remains authentic and true and consistent, so that when you have somebody new coming, it's really compelling and exciting for them. But if they're returning, there's little things that they may notice that change. You don't need to reinvent the wheel each time. It just needs to be a little bit more special.
And Himanil, I know you had some kind of thoughts around that importance of that local community to ensure you keep your brand identity.
Yes, I mean, it's a very fancy thing to do in terms of, trying to tell our story, but honestly we're still building our story, our own brand story. So we're not there in terms of coming back and saying, oh, we've got some very beautiful properties, and each of them obviously have their own stories to tell, and we try and tell them. But what we've realized over the years is that the customers look for simplicity in everything that they want today, but they want engagement in a very different way. And every customer has a different expectation that they come with. Some come with just a very simple expectation that they need a good night's sleep because they just want to finish their work and get back home. And some come for the experience part of it. For us, that's where the big challenge obviously comes in, because trying to tell one brand story and then trying to actually cater to 20 different customer types becomes quite challenging for us. So what we've tried to do is simplify our own messaging to just say 2 or 3 simple things as to what you really get from us. So we're trying to, in a sense, reduce the expectation of a customer and then try and see if we can elevate the experience once they're there. And that's when we would want to tell different kinds of stories. And that's where we integrate the community story as well. So that's where we are at our journey right now, where we're not really trying to say big stories about ourselves or about our brand, but we're trying to simplify the messaging that we are a simple brand trying to give you a good night's sleep. And of course, a little bit out here and there as well. And once they come in and then they experience it, and once we can actually elevate that experience to the next level, that's when we know that there is a lot more that we can actually do. And that's where the community part comes in, which they love. The sustainability comes in, that's when they love. So, but those are added points that we are slowly and steadily building. But we're not trying to push all our stories at the same time, because we feel that it kind of confuses our customers in a way that we don't want them to. We want them to come having a very simple expectation and then slowly and steadily engage with them and elevate their experience.
And I think that's amazing in terms of that exceeding those expectations once they're on site. That leaves such a lasting memory for them, and that's something that they will talk about with their friends and their family and want to come back again. So that's great.
Exactly.
And so moving on to strategic partnerships, how have your brands collaborated with local businesses, wellness brands, influencers, celebrities, whatever it might be, that has helped you expand your market reach and therefore kind of give a different type of guest experience? Holly, do you want to start?
Sure. So in terms of Apex, we've done some really interesting and some nice partnerships. So we've worked with DC Thompson up in Dundee for our hotel there, and we have a Beano focused package there. So Beano inspired rooms. Obviously, it's the homeland of the Beano. So in terms of our family proposition, that partnership's been going now 2 to 3 years, and we're always looking at how do we keep it fresh, how do we innovate. Through afternoon teas, kids' parties, through to having dress-up boxes, splasher-inspired bits and pieces, all of that great stuff. So that's been really interesting from a family proposition. We have also, and in kind of, I mentioned Pine Trees, which is our new hotel due to open end of October, early November. We've been looking at who in that area would really helped us to build our brand story. So I think the position that we're not too far from Gleneagles. I'm not sure if any of those guys are in the room, but we've also looked at our position in that market and in that area too. How can we show up and how can we do things slightly differently so that we do stand out? So in terms of the brand proposition, what we're looking to create there, looking and working with the likes of Land Rover so that we make sure that, that positioning in terms of comms is on point. Looking at the local chocolatier, so how we'll do like masterclasses. We're working with obviously the many distilleries, the local distilleries that we have around us there. And then also just looking at how you mentioned in terms of influencers and micro-influencers, Jessica, I think that's really important when we're coming up to a new launch. How can we leverage their following, their not sense of cool, but how can we combine, and come at things so we can support across both platforms. And having had previous experience at Gaucho for a while, marketing director over there, we did quite a lot in terms of sustainability, obviously with steak being a bit of a challenge there. And we looked at sustainable supper clubs, we worked with Loki, Stylist Magazine, the Biscuiteers. So we always really tried to challenge ourselves to think, well, what's expected and what isn't. Prior to that, I did some work at Mitchells and Butlers with All Bar One, and we really wanted to fill the funnel. We wanted to recruit younger guest demographic there. We knew that our demographic was was aging, so we wanted to recruit that Gen Z, that 20 plus female predominantly into that brand. So we didn't have huge budget, so it was right. We want to do something vegan. Let's pair with a vegan influencer who was a Gymshark athlete, and it didn't cost us a lot. 5K. We hosted an event at Leicester Square. But ultimately it drove engagement, it helped us fill the funnel, it helped us recruit younger guest demographic. So I think in terms of partnerships, they're so valuable, just making sure that you're thinking fresh and coming at it from a slightly different, unexpected perspective, I would say.
Great. And Jessica, from your point of view, particularly kind of within that local area?
Absolutely, and I think much like what Holly and Sarah have been saying, we're a little bit spoilt for choice in York. There is an abundance of amazing suppliers and amazing brands that are local to Yorkshire and local to us. We would damage ourselves by not leaning into some of these people. So when we look at our partnerships, we really focus on what our brand story is and what is really important for us to say at the Grand. For us, it's really about that Yorkshire hospitality and welcoming people to Yorkshire and being ambassadors for York, whether that be corporate guests or whether that be leisure guests. Now, we have a unique opportunity by being an ambassador for York to celebrate some of the people that we get to work with every single day. So Legacy is our fine dining restaurant. Currently 3 rosettes, but fingers crossed for a little bit of elevation. Legacy works on the ethos that everything we put in that restaurant, where possible, comes from a 30-mile radius. That is from the meat that we use, the honey comes from the bees that are on the roof, all the way down to the crockery and some of the furniture that we actually have in the restaurant when they built it. By celebrating all of those local suppliers outwardly, so we talk about them on our social media, we're starting to list them on our website. We are, instead of constantly telling everybody that we're being sustainable and we're supporting these brand partners, we're just showing them. Why not show them who the supplier is? Why not show them who our R&J butchers are, who are a couple of 100 years old in Yorkshire? Why not show them this beautiful crockery that we've had specifically made for the restaurant by the local ceramicist in York? So we are leaning into the amazing, incredible people that we have in our local city in order to, it strengthens our brand position because we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're telling people that we really celebrate York. We're telling people that we are all about Yorkshire hospitality, but we're also showing it to you when you come onto property, on our social media, on our websites, and we're giving these local brands also the opportunity to benefit from our platform as well. We have a lot of guests come through the door. Our website hits 60,000 a month, and you get 21,000 people following us on Instagram. Why not give those people that platform as well and give other people the opportunity to lean into our business as much as we lean into them? So that's how we're really going about it in terms of our Legacy restaurant at the moment. But there are other things that I could talk about, but I won't take up everybody's time.
Lovely, thank you guys. I think we've got a couple of minutes left if anybody has any questions. I'll take that as a no. Okay. Yeah. Lovely, thank you. Is it time for lunch, Charles? Okay, lunchtime, guys. Thank you.